Hello and welcome to Tehelka Skype. We have with us G. Ananthapadmanabhan, Chief Executive of Amnesty International India. Welcome, sir. Yeah. First of all, what is your assessment of the ground situation in Sri Lanka, and what is the evidence to suggest that it was genocide?
See, there are two separate questions. The first one about what's the ground situation in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
The ground situation in Sri Lanka with respect to human rights is fairly grave. In the last 4 years since the end of the war, unfortunately, rather than have reconciliation and progress, the Sri Lankan government has gotten more and more authoritarian. More and more human rights are being curbed. Journalists are under attack. Media professionals are under. In fact, anybody who is critical of the government, even if they express their views in a peaceful way, are being targeted. Not to mention the misuse of things like the Prevention of Terrorism Act to lock away anybody they think has rebel sympathies and so on and so forth. So overall, the situation in Sri Lanka has become quite grave, has deteriorated. The regime has taken authoritarian turn. Extrajudicial executions still continue. Torture still seems to be prevalent, and so on and so forth. So this is the broad context. And if you look at the more, let's say, ground situation with respect to rehabilitation and reconstruction, there seems to be quite a systematic effort while rehabilitation has progressed to a certain extent in the north, it seems to be the fear at least of many Sri Lankan Tamils is that their lands are going to be taken away by the military, their lands are going to be taken away by the Sinhala people, are going to settle there and so on. So a lot of uncertainty about what is going to be the future of North and East Sri Lanka. That's the situation on the ground. The question of genocide, however, is a different question. It refers to what happened at the end of the war in 2009. And Amnesty has a very, very clear position on that there is credible evidence that there has been war crimes.
Okay.
We wouldn't even say that there's evidence at this point of time that directly points to genocide or anything of that sort. But we do think it is only an international independent investigation that can verify whether war crimes happened or whether genocide happened or, ascertain these claims. And by the way, when we're talking about war crimes, we're talking about crimes on both sides. So that's why Amnesty is so keen on having an independent international investigation. So it's premature to call what happened genocide. But we will never know till we have a good independent international investigation.
Yeah. Now the US based the draft resolution that the US is right now circulating has created quite a furor in the parliament, as you know, and they're calling it a watered down resolution. What is your take on that?
See, we think from India's point of view, the resolution is not strong enough. That is, if you look at it from the role India ought to be playing in the neighborhood, from the role India ought to be playing on this moral and profound justice issue right in our doorstep, the resolution doesn't go far enough. It has too much language that is very kind to Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan government has had 4 years in which to set its record straight, and it hasn't done so. So it doesn't acknowledge that sufficiently. So from an Indian point of view, from the point of view of what India ought to be looking for, it is not strong enough at all. But if you look at it from a purely UN perspective and the perspective that let's say international diplomacy moving step by step, the resolution is stronger than it was last year, right? The point is, from the first draft that came out 10 days ago to the second draft that came out 2 days ago, it has definitely been diluted. But if you look at it from a 1 year perspective, what the resolution was that got passed last time, this is definitely an improvement. But India definitely should be doing a lot more.
So Amnesty says that the draft clearly shows the imprint of Indian influence. So what do you mean by that?
See, there's language in the resolution, this version of the resolution, that wasn't there in the first draft of the US circulated. That has been lifted straight, or more or less straight from India's UPR statement.
Okay.
So this is clear indication that India has had a influence on the resolution.
Why do you think this softening of statement has
Yes, I
happened?
mean the language around appreciating the elections or the appreciating the assurance that elections will be called. That, by the way, calling for elections is a good thing. I'm not saying that's not worthy of appreciation, but I'm saying that language came straight from India's UPR statement.
Okay.
And I mean that so that sentiment came from India's UPR statement. So it's fairly clear that India has had an influence, right? Now the point is whether that influence came from an active effort from India or from a US effort to make it more acceptable. We will never know. So that's the point. Is not that India actually deliberately went and did this, but India's intention, which is to be kind to Sri Lanka, right, has definitely had an influence on the resolution, and that the influence is fairly obvious. Yeah.
One of the major amendments that the DMK is seeking right now is instead of an independent investigation, they want an international investigation. How much do you think Sri Lanka can be trusted for an independent investigation taking place?
See, the thing is, it is not we do see that it is not a desirable thing that an international investigation is conducted into the affairs of a country, particularly where the government is an elected democratic government. I mean, for all the majoritarian triumphalist sort of faults of Rajapaksa regime, we cannot deny that Rajapaksa was elected by the Sri Lankan people. So it is not. I mean, we do understand that an international investigation is not necessarily easily acceptable or a desirable thing. But this must be seen in the context of the last 4 years. Since the end of the war in 2009, the international community has been waiting for Sri Lanka to act on various promises. And now the international community is very clear that its own national action plan is far from adequate. The LLRC, which itself did not have sufficient independence, which is flawed.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Did anything come out of it, and what did it suggest?
See, the LLRC was, in our opinion, set up with insufficient independence.
Okay.
And had very limited mandate. But even so, it did come up with some very useful recommendations. Right? Even those recommendations in terms of investigating allegations and so on and so forth, even those recommendations the Sri Lankan government has not implemented, which just goes to strengthen the case, as that expecting the Sri Lankan government to investigate is a difficult thing. And of late, new evidence is further pointing to very serious, crimes, etc., by the army and human rights violation, serious crimes by the army, extrajudicial executions, etc., etc. So it's pointing to a very profound involvement of the army. So the question is, in that circumstance, how will the Sri Lankan government have the ability to set up and investigate? How much will does it have to actually have an independent investigation? This is really at the crux of the suggestion that why it must be international.
What is your expectation from the UNHCR when it goes to vote on Friday?
We definitely hope. I mean, it's very heartening that today the government of India has come out much more clearly in its position is a lot clearer that it will vote for the resolution against Sri Lanka in the UN. And it's also heartening to hear the Indian government officially say that it believes in accountability in Sri Lanka. And there's some fairly strong language in the Indian government's press release. It talks about goading Sri Lanka into accepting a credible and independent investigation. So it's some fairly strong language there. So India's, I think, gotten off the fence on this one. So it's clear which side India is sitting on, and that's a good development. But whether the resolution would meet the standards of that we've been pushing for, namely of having a credible, of accepting Navi Pillai's suggestion to have a credible international investigation, independent international investigation. Whether we hope that we'll go that far, but that's, there are many considerations. Human rights is only one of them.
Okay. Yeah, this is all about the language of the draft and all, but on the ground, what is the situation of the Tamils right now? What is Amnesty doing to improve the situation?
One of the big challenges for all civil society in Sri Lanka is that we don't get access. In fact, one of the demands, in fact, one of the suggestions that the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner made after her investigation was that both special procedures and special rapporteurs of the UNHCR and civil society organizations be given unfettered access so they can actually help the situation on the ground, assess it. And there's also been offer of technical assistance from the Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, which Sri Lanka has rejected. So this is one of the reasons why the international community, the people who want to see an improvement on the ground are not able to help too much. But having said that, we do know from our colleagues and contacts and our civil society partners in Sri Lanka that every time there is a UN Human Rights Council resolution, it does create more space for civil society. It does create more space for rights defenders on the ground in Sri Lanka. So that is the immediate test. But of course, the real thing is there is absolutely no hope for long-term reconciliation, reconstruction, without a measure of truth and accountability. That's what we are at the moment focusing on, striving for.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Yeah.
All right. Thank
Nice
you.
talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.